Republicans have held control of Colorado's 5th Congressional District since its creation in 1972.
This is the year we are flipping the 5th, y'all.
But the political landscape is changing, and Democrats see a path to victory. But Republicans won this seat by double digits just 2 years ago.
I still think it's going to be double digits.
Coloradans are facing a high cost of living. The U.S. is in the midst of international conflict, and the priorities of the Trump administration have had an impact here at home. Will voters re-elect incumbent Republican Congressman Jeff Crank, or will they look to turn the district blue with Democratic challenger Jessica Killin? Tonight, we'll hear from the candidates on the issues top of mind for voters in this 5th Congressional District debate. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this 5th Congressional District debate. I'm Allison Zimmerman, alongside Colorado politics reporter Ernest Lenning. We are very excited you're joining us here on News 5, as well as all of our different streaming platforms. Tonight, we'll be hearing from incumbent Congressman Jeff Crank, a Republican, and Democratic challenger Jessica Killin. Now, we do have a few rules for this debate. Candidates will be given 1 minute to answer each question. Candidates will both be asked the same question. Rebuttals will be at our discretion, and those will be 30 seconds. Candidates have not been provided these questions ahead of time, and we will also have a short answer round throughout this debate, and we'll be giving those instructions at the beginning of that round. For the most part, it's going to be yes/no questions, but also shorter answers as well. Now, I do want to make a few remarks for our audience here at the Pikes Peak Center this evening. We are very grateful to the Pikes Peak Center for hosting us. Again, as Kyle Hibble mentioned before this program, we want to keep this a very fair and respectful environment. So we ask that you do not applaud or cheer throughout this debate. You will have some time at the very end, though, to do some applause at the conclusion, and we'll let you know when that happens. Once again, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, we also held a coin toss before the debate, and Jessica Killin won. You've selected to answer the first question first and second, which means you'll have the first closing statement.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
I thought she wanted to do it back the other way. You wanted to close at the end.
I wanted to close at the end, yeah.
She wants to close it at the end.
Okay,
Yes.
so you'll answer first for the first question.
I'll answer the first question second, and then I'll close last.
No.
Oh, okay.
You'll answer the first question first, and then Jeff Crank will give the closing statement first.
Okay.
And then
Great.
there we go. All right.
We're all on the same page then. Good. All right. I'll start with this first question, and Ms. Killin, you will have the first answer. You'll have 1 minute. Colorado's 5th Congressional District, which covers most of El Paso County, is rapidly changing, both in population, demographics, and political makeup. Recent election results show the district is becoming less reliably Republican, while unaffiliated voters make up a growing share. What do you think voters in this district want from their member of Congress, and why are you best suited to represent them?
Well, thank you, Allison, and thank you to KOAA, the Gazette, and El Pomar for hosting this, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight and being engaged in this critical election. I am running, first and foremost, because I'm a patriot, and I love my country, and I love El Paso County, and I believe we deserve more and better than what we are currently getting from our congressional leadership in Congress. I'm a 4th-generation Colorado native, born and raised right here in southern Colorado. I grew up in a middle-class household, the child of 2 public school educators. After graduating from Falcon High School, I went on to serve my country overseas in the Army as a military police officer. And after returning from my service, I came back and worked at USAA for over a decade, shoring up the financial security of veterans and service members. And what I hear from people across this community is they want someone who's actually going to deliver results. I got to live my version of the American dream, and I want to make sure that other people in our community have the opportunity to also live the American dream, and that's what I will do. Thank you.
And Mr. Crank.
Well, thank you, and thanks for hosting this, and thank you, Ms. Killin, for agreeing to do this as well. Look, I was born and raised in southern Colorado. This is my home. I've lived here in Colorado Springs for the last 29 years. I do have my pulse, I think, on the citizens of this district and what I think they need and what they desire. And I think one of the things that they really want is someone who's not just going to go back to Washington, D.C. to fight or to cheer for one side or the other, but somebody who's going to represent them. And when things get tough, or when there's an issue that comes up, like, for instance, the challenge with Space Command, that they're going to go out and work to do things better for this community, to bring jobs here, and to do everything they can to represent them.
All right, we'll go to the second question. Mr. Crank, in the first year of the Trump administration, CQ roll call says you were the only member of Colorado's congressional delegation to vote with President Trump 100% of the time. And Ms. Killin, you served in the White House for the last year and a half of the Biden administration. Now, how do you balance meeting the needs of your constituents in the district versus loyalty to your party? Mr. Crank, you have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, they're wrong. CQ is wrong. I voted first and foremost to override the president's veto, which he pushed very hard when he vetoed water project here, the authority for water projects in the Arkansas Valley. I voted against that. I don't know where CQ, I guess they don't count all the votes, just the ones they choose to count. I haven't voted with the president 100% of the time, and I don't agree with the president 100% of the time. I've disagreed with him on mid-decade redistricting, on the veto override of the Arkansas Valley conduit, wildfire and flood disaster relief funding, water project fundings in Colorado, Argentinian beef. I signed on a letter with John Hickenlooper to do that. So that's nothing more than CQ doing their typical Washington nonsense. You know, I support the president when the president's right, and I support this community at all times.
All right, thank you. Ms. Killin.
Thank you. You know, I think people, what I hear every day out in the district as I'm out talking to folks is they're suffering and they are craving someone who's actually willing to work across the aisle and deliver real results for our community. You know, as someone who grew up in the middle class, I know we have to have an economy that is working better for the people in our community. And honestly, this economy is not working. And that is because Jeff Crank has voted for bills that have put people in a tougher situation, and he does vote with Trump all the time. Nothing to put there. 8 times he had the opportunity to put a check on the Trump tariffs that are wreaking havoc on our small businesses, on our working families. They are a tax. He used to say he didn't like tariffs, but in fact, he's voted to approve them multiple times. He voted twice to not release the Epstein files. He voted 5 times to keep the Iran war going. The bottom line is he's not willing to stand up to Trump, and we deserve someone who will.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Crank, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
Sure, I would, because none of that's true. I didn't vote to not release the Epstein files. There was one vote on whether or not we released the Epstein files. Now, there were some Democrat tricks to try and showboat on the Epstein files, but there was one vote to release them, and I voted the exact same way that I said I would vote on the Epstein files, and that was to release the Epstein files in totality. On tariffs, I've been very clear. I'm not a supporter of long-term tariffs, but I want to give the president the opportunity to make good trade deals.
Okay, Ms. Killin, how would you have voted on some of those same questions?
I think tariffs have a place, but these tariffs are reckless and harmful to our community, to the economy of our country, and they are not strategic and thoughtful. I've said that multiple times. I would have signed the discharge petition immediately to release the Epstein files, not waited until my hand was essentially forced. And I have said time and time again, this war in Iran is reckless. We went into this war with no strategic plan or goal, and I think it's time for Congress to take back its power, its war powers authority.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on to affordability now. And Jessica, we'll begin with you. Affordability remains a top concern for voters. Congress recently passed the bipartisan Road to Housing Act, which became law without President Trump's signature. Mr. Crank, you voted for it. Killin, you have said the affordable housing stock needs to be improved. Does that law go far enough to lower housing costs? And what specifically would each of you do next to make housing more affordable?
Yes, the housing bill is a good start. It was a really good bill put forth by both Tim Scott and Elizabeth Warren. I'm glad that Jeff supported it. There is more that we need to do. After, this community has been through a housing boom, or a boom, and essentially a bunch of housing was built when the boom began that is in the $500,000 plus range. And we now have a bunch of empty $500,000 plus houses. We have not right-sized and incomes have not kept pace with that. And so we have not right-sized our housing supply. So I would focus on first, putting a check on the Trump tariffs, which are making it harder to build an affordable house. But I would also focus on policies relating to getting people into homes earlier and building more starter homes, $200,000 houses, $300,000, incentivizing the right type of housing to be built, and making sure that then we also do a first-time home buyer tax credit to get people in there earlier, because that sets them on the path to home ownership, which is the cornerstone of the American dream.
And Mr. Crank.
Our local home builders will tell you that here in Colorado, $140,000 of the cost of a new home is because of government regulation. There's over-regulation in this state, and the crazy laws that are coming out of this Democrat legislature and governor have caused housing to skyrocket across Colorado. There's a couple things we can do at the federal level. I was a proud supporter of the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, which Ms. Killin mentioned, but I've also done a couple of other things. I have a bill called the Framer Act that I have introduced. It's my bill that would try and get rid of some of these crazy environmental regulations that are out there in the state of Colorado and force the state to pay for those. In addition to that, I have also just introduced a bill called the Student Loan Debt Reduction Act, and it would allow people, student loan holders, to get that debt paid off, up to $25,000 of it, to get in a new home.
And you guys will each have 1 minute for this additional follow-up, but something else that I would like to hear a little bit more from, specifically to you, Ms. Killin, is what does the incentivization actually look like when it comes to building the right housing in your mind? And then beyond housing, what else does Congress need to do to make things more affordable?
Yeah, I think, sometimes this is an important thing about federal legislation is that you can use it as a carrot and a stick to, first of all, I think you could use it as a stick and carrot to help make sure that we are streamlining regulations and deregulating where we need to in the Colorado legislature. But Jeff hasn't really done that. And in terms of what we can do, we can incentivize, do tax credits and incentives for builders to build the $200,000, $300,000 houses. I do think we need to get rid of construction defect here in Colorado. That's a huge problem in our ability to build condos, and it's something that we need to work on. And I think at the federal level, you can help incentivize making the right type of policies. And then, as I said, I think a first-time home buyer tax credit, and also doing some wiggle room around down payment requirements. I know that there's a lot of different proposals out there that help bring down the down payment requirements a little bit, where we can still maintain safety and soundness at banks, but get people into those homes sooner so they can build that wealth.
And Jeff, beyond housing, what else does Congress need to do?
I'm sorry?
Beyond housing, what else does Congress need to do to make life more affordable?
Oh, to make life more affordable, there's lots we still need to do. One thing we did, and we have to remember from where we came, we had 9% inflation in 1 year during the Biden administration. 9%. We inherited a mess. When I got to Washington, it was a mess. It was a 40-year high. Inflation was at a 40-year high. And I do want to remind folks that my opponent was the deputy assistant to President Joe Biden in the White House, and she was a chief of staff in Vice President Kamala Harris's office. So she was part of that Biden administration. And do you remember the price of eggs? Do you remember groceries? All these things are up. They're still high. They're way too high, and we still need to do more. What did we do? We passed the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. We put more money in the pockets of the American people. In El Paso County, $4,000 in the average family here in El Paso County in money came in because of the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, and I'd love to talk more about some of the specific tax cuts that we did there.
I would like to give you just 30 seconds.
Sure. I'd like to talk more about other affordability things, but to respond to Jeff's comment about my last job at the White House, I worked as a chief of staff for Doug Emhoff All the work I did was combating anti-Semitism in the aftermath of October 7th, and I'm proud of the work I did. And I'm proud of my record of service for my entire career, from serving in the military, working at USAA, and then working in key leadership positions, always focused on delivering for the American people.
And also, I'd like to follow up with Jeff here, 30 seconds, just beyond tax cuts, because we're still looking at the most recent BLS statistics showing consumer prices rising 3.4%, wages growing only 3.2%. The reality is people are still struggling.
Sure they are.
So can you realistically tax cut your way out of the affordability?
Yeah, well, tax cuts will grow the economy. What's happened during the Biden years is that inflation outpaced wages, and wages must catch up with the price of goods, and that's not happened yet, but it's getting better. The price of gas was higher under Joe Biden than it is today. We have to remember that. It was $5 and...
Audience, please.
Keep it down, please.
Audience.
The price of gas was $5.01 a gallon in June of 2022. That was under Joe Biden. You can check the facts. Gas is still too high, however. All the prices are too high. What can we do? We can continue to try and grow the economy, deregulate, and create jobs in America, but we're not doing that here in Colorado.
Can I
And I will
respond to
just,
that? Okay.
yeah,
All right.
and I will just give you 30 seconds, and then we do want to get to some other topics.
Okay, just in terms of like core affordability stuff, I just want to say, I think we should have had tax cuts that are actually strategically for working people in the middle class. The One Big Beautiful Bill, as we all know, created massive tax breaks for billionaires, and it's at the expense of working people. And you say you gave people tax cuts, but I'm telling you, along with the tariffs, which are a tax, and other issues around gas prices, which have gone up, people are not feeling it. They are struggling every single day. They are hurting, and you are not delivering.
Let's move on to our next topic. Let's wait until the end for any applause, please. Tomorrow marks 6 months since the beginning of the shooting war with Iran. Mr. Crank, you said early on that you supported the president's goals. Ms. Killin, you voiced opposition, even here tonight. With gas prices soaring, casualties mounting, and alliances feeling the strain, was it the right decision to go into the war? And what are your positions on the war today? Mr. Crank, 1 minute.
Well, my position has been the same. It's been the same during the Trump administration as it was during the Obama administration. Presidents should come to Congress and seek congressional approval before they commit troops to war. President Obama did not do that, and President Trump chose not to do it here. He should have. But I'm not going to vote to pull the rug out from underneath our men and women who are deployed and fighting for us in the military by voting against authorization of the War Powers Act. I'm just not going to do it. I will say this. I sit in classified briefings. I know the threat. The president knows the threat that was there from Iran. The Biden administration knew the threat. They just chose not to act in on it. We know what the threat is. We need to get done and get finished there. And I do think we need to do that as quickly as possible. But I am not going to vote to pull the rug out from underneath our men and women who serve us in the military today.
Okay, Ms. Killin.
As a veteran, I know what our troops are facing overseas, and I know that Iran is a dangerous regime. But I do believe in the power of Congress and the war powers authority of Congress. And you, Jeff, have voted 5 times to just bypass your own power, your own authority. And there's a reason why, by the way, President Biden, a bunch of other presidents, Bush, H.W. Bush, have not gone into war with Iran because they knew that Iran would not be a rational actor. They knew that we would end up in a situation with asymmetric warfare in the Strait of Hormuz. That is why this has never happened before, and now we are facing the very dire, serious consequences for our own national security, for the global security, for our economy, because there wasn't enough thought that went into a strategy on how we were going to get out of this war if we went into it. It's been incredibly dangerous, and that's why we need to take back the power of Congress and have Congress put a check on this.
Mr. Crank, if you're not going to vote to invoke the War Powers Act and pull the rug out from under the troops, how do you hold the administration accountable, short of budgeting a year from now, something like that? How do you exert Congress's war power?
Again, Ernest, I wanted the president, this president, and every president to come to Congress. We should have asked this question when President Obama went into Syria and other places. And so this sort of this selective issue. I think presidents should do that, and I think Congress should hold their Article I powers. They should be more jealous about guarding that. But look, I saw the intelligence. The Iranians were getting ready to launch an attack on our military bases. This is out there, people know it. They were getting ready to launch attacks on our men and women who serve us in that region, and the president had to act. If he hadn't, guess what? We'd have Democrats out there trying to impeach him today for not doing that. So it's a tough decision that the president made. It's a tough situation, and we got to get through it as soon as we can and as effectively as we can.
Okay. Ms. Killin, 30 seconds.
Audience,
Let's try to keep
please.
the rebuttals to 30 seconds.
Everything I've seen on why we went into the war with Iran is that we were talked into it by Bibi Netanyahu. I don't know what story he's telling, but the bottom line is also you do have authority, you do have power. You can actually put a check on this now that we're 6 months in with no end in sight.
Mr. Crank, what is the end in sight? The Strait of Hormuz was open beforehand. It's not now. It's a chokehold on the world economy. We're going into wintertime. What's the way out?
Well, what was the way out in the Biden administration? There was no way out. They were pursuing nuclear capability, and they continued to get close. So where are we today? Well, we have put a hurt on them when it comes to the nuclear capability, number one. Number two, the president is implementing more economic sanctions that will further strangle this regime. It's something that the Biden administration supported, and now all of a sudden they don't support that because they want to get after Donald Trump. That's all it is to them.
Okay, is that what's going on, Ms. Killin?
No, this has nothing to do with Donald Trump. This has to do with making rational, thoughtful decisions when you put our troops in harm's way, when you spend $100 billion of taxpayer dollars, when you cause gas prices to go up by over $1, you should have a clear strategy on how you're going to get in, how you're going to get out, how you're going to deal with the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, there was no strategy.
All right, we want to move on to some other topics now. Service members aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln have spent more than 250 days at sea amid reports of food shortages and deteriorating living conditions. And here at Fort Carson, soldiers have also reported problems accessing adequate meals in the last 2 years. Is the Pentagon meeting its obligation to care for service members and their families, and what should Congress do about it? You have 1 minute.
As an Army veteran and someone who knows and understands what troops go through in deployments, the key piece to mission readiness, to being able to effectively fight a war, is troop morale and troop welfare. No aircraft carrier should be underway for 250 days. That is insane. And we should have had better planning in the Middle East for how we were going to execute this strategy and execute this war over the course of 6 months. But of course, nobody had a plan. They didn't know this was going to last 6 months. And now here we're in a situation where we're putting our troops not only in harm's way in terms of warfare, but we're not taking care of their morale and their welfare. And if you don't have troop morale and welfare, you have nothing in terms of readiness and war fighting capacity.
Well, if we want to talk about morale of our troops, let's talk about what we've done. The bill that Ms. Killin said she would have voted against, the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, provided an increase in base allowance for housing for our men and women in the military. I voted for it. Ms. Killin would have voted against it. It's that simple. We have provided an 18.5% pay increase to our men and women in the military for quality of life over the last 2 years. And if we want to talk about why we had to keep a carrier over there, and it is terrible. We shouldn't have a carrier deployed for that length of time. The Biden administration underfunded defense year after year after year. These are simple facts. The Biden administration underfunded defense. We don't have enough ships. We're behind China in the number of ships that we have. We're almost behind in space. We're ahead barely. but China is on our heels. We need to increase defense spending, and it was the Biden administration that left it just to rust for so many years.
I would like to give you 30 seconds.
Yes, well, Joe Biden is no longer the president. Donald Trump is the president. When you talk a lot about Joe Biden's presidency, you are also a member of the House Armed Services Committee. You have the ability to actually put a check on and make sure we are taking care of our troops. And of course, I support funding for our troops. I don't support other provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill, like the massive tax cuts that you gave to billionaires that are hurting working families and hurting the middle class.
May I have 30 seconds?
Yes.
You have an up or down vote in Congress. You would have voted against the base allowance for housing increase if you would have voted against that bill. You would have voted against a base allowance for housing increase for our men and women in the military. And I know you like this talking point about tax cuts for millionaires and for billionaires. It was the largest tax cut in American history, $4,000 per family, no tax on tips. I don't think billionaires earn tips. No tax on overtime, senior tax exemption. We doubled the child tax credit. Those are middle-class tax cuts that put more money in the families of the American people and the citizens of this county.
Yeah. What do you have to say to that?
I encourage him to go actually talk to middle-class households here in El Paso County, because I don't know anyone who is feeling those tax cuts, and they've also gotten $4,000 in tax increases from the tariffs that you failed to put a check on.
And Mr. Crank, we'll give you 30 seconds before we move on to our next question.
I'm sorry?
We'll give you 30 seconds before we move on to our next question.
Sure. You would have $4,000 less in your pocket today if my opponent had voted against the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, because it wouldn't have passed. So the tax cuts that you have, you're better off because of those. It's not enough. We need to continue to work to make life more affordable, and we're going to do that by taking more money out of the hopefully out of the hands of government, and getting it back to the American people, and get rid of some of the regulation that's going on in this state and in this country.
Move on, but we'll continue talking about H.R. 1. That's the Republican signature tax and spending bill that you've been talking about. Goes by several names. One Big Beautiful Bill is one. Congress cut nearly $1 trillion out of Medicaid and SNAP funding over the next decade by establishing a bunch of rules and setting up some things, but it's growing at $1 trillion less than it would have under previous projections. Last year, Democrats shut down the government in order to restore some health care funding that didn't wind up getting back to it. What's the approach forward? How do we make health care more affordable and cover people who need coverage? Mr. Crank.
Well, first, on the Medicaid issue that was in that bill, we put work requirements in for able-bodied adults between the ages of 18 and 65. Those are work requirements. The requirements are, if you're receiving Medicaid, that you must work at least 20 hours a week, or you can volunteer 20 hours a week, or go to school 20 hours a week. Those aren't outrageous requirements. And by the way, that doesn't kick anybody off Medicaid. That makes them choose. If they want to continue to get Medicaid, they have to work for 20 hours a week. Those are things that Bill Clinton put on welfare requirements back when he was president of the United States. They're common sense. It's only that Democrats have chosen to demagogue this issue. Now, here in Colorado, the problem with Medicaid is that the legislature here has expanded Medicaid so wide that the people who really need it, the people with disabilities, the people with children who have disabilities, are competing with 35-year-old people sitting on their couch who want to be lazy and collect Medicaid. That is wrong.
All right, Ms. Killin.
I'll speak a little bit about the One Big Beautiful Bill then on health care. You know, that bill added $5 trillion to the debt. And if you feel like your mortgage interest rates are going up, other interest rates are going up on your credit card, you have Jeff Crank to thank. I also will say, you know, regardless of what you want to say about the Medicaid changes, it's estimated to take 225,000 people off of their health care here in Colorado. And what I hear every day, and the most egregious provisions of this bill, by the way, are due to take effect in 2027. They gamed the system a little bit. And I'll just say, and I go around, I talk to families, they are hurting already on their health care costs. The average family of 4 here in Colorado that used to have a $500 premium, already now their premium has gone up to $2,000. So the provisions of this bill are only harming working families again and making life more expensive for Coloradans.
Mr. Crank, 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, let me talk a little bit about health care in general. If you don't like your health care today, and I don't like my health care, my health care is $1,200 premium a month. I'm on the Obama health care exchange. That's what I am on as a member of Congress, believe it or not. That's what I do. My monthly premium is $1,200 a month, and it's a terrible plan. But the bottom line is this: if you don't like the plan you have Obamacare. Because during the Obama administration, they went behind closed doors with the insurance companies and wrote rules so that insurance companies would get filthy rich in the system. And that is what's happening. And we need to rein in those insurance companies. And you don't do it by simply demagoguing and putting more government in. You do it by reining them in as insurance companies.
Okay, thank you. And let's keep an eye on the clock there.
Really quickly?
Yeah, you've got 30 seconds.
This is something he and I agree on. I agree. We do need to rein in the insurance companies. I haven't seen you actually do anything about that since you've been in office. And if you are paying $1,200 a month, you're doing a lot better than a lot of people who are paying, like I said, around $2,000 a month. So we have a lot of work to do to shore up our healthcare system. It is not working for anyone other than the health insurance companies, and I do think we need a full overhaul of the health insurance company, health insurance system, and I would work for that in Congress.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to our short answer segment of the evening. And so as part of this, we're not going to run the clock, but candidates, we just ask that you keep your answers about 15 seconds, nice and short. And then, because we're so nice, at the end of this short answer segment, you guys are each going to have a minute if you would like to make any clarifying statements within this period.
Okay. We'll start with an easy one. And Ms. Killin, and then we can just go back and forth.
Great.
What's your favorite Dolly Parton song?
Jolene, Jolene. There you go.
Working 9 to 5.
All right. Are you confident?
I'm wearing a Dolly Parton pin tonight.
Okay. Well, are you confident Colorado's mail-in voting system is secure and accurate? Ms. Killin.
I am. A safe and secure, free and fair elections are a cornerstone of democracy. I've talked to Steve Schleicher, our county clerk, many times. Okay. He has told me our system is good and solid, and I believe in it, and I know it's a good system that works for everyone here in El Paso County.
Okay, Mr. Crank.
I am confident that we do have a secure system here in El Paso County, and I also believe that we ought to, though, still have passed the Save America Act, unlike my opponent.
Okay, Ms. Killin, do you commit to holding in-person town halls open to the general public and announced in advance during your first term? And how many will you hold?
I've publicly committed to doing them at least once a quarter.
Okay.
Open to the public and announcing them in advance, because that's what the job of the House of Representatives is. The job title, the description is in the job title.
Okay, Mr. Crank.
I've held 7 town hall meetings. In fact, two of them before my opponent moved into the district last June. I've had dozens of roundtables with constituents. I've visited over 50 companies and their employees. I've gone to 30 churches and synagogues. I come home every single week. I've done 7 ride-alongs with the police department and the fire department.
All right, thanks. Let's mix up the order here. Mr. Crank, do you support a ban on members of Congress trading individual stocks?
Not only do I support a ban, and I voted for a ban, I have never bought a publicly traded stock since I've been a member of Congress, and I never will.
All right, Ms. Killin.
Yes, I have publicly said I support not only a stock ownership and public stock trading ban in Congress, but it should also apply to the judicial branch and to the executive branch, because public service it should be for actually the public, not for your own self-interest.
I'm going to say that was my follow-up. Mr. Crank, should the same restrictions apply to the members of the executive branch?
Certainly, yeah.
Okay.
It should, and to this judiciary branch, too.
All right. Mr. Crank, do you routinely use artificial intelligence, AI? And if so, which platform do you prefer?
Do I personally use it?
Yeah, do you personally ask Claude questions or Gemini?
Yeah, absolutely. I use ChatGPT quite a bit.
ChatGPT?
Yep, I do.
Okay. Ms. Killin?
it pops up when I do searches, but I usually try to do my own research because I think that that's important, but yes, of course.
Okay. Mr. Crank, do you support a data center moratorium in El Paso County?
I don't know that I support a data center moratorium per se.
Okay.
I think it is not a federal issue about whether data centers should go in local areas like this. The last thing I want is me and 434 other members deciding that El Paso County should have a data center. That should be a local decision decided by our planning commissions.
All right, Ms. Killin?
I agree that the placement of data centers is of a local issue. I will say data centers, especially that are related to military, we should probably pass something at the federal level that puts them on military installations. And I do think that at the federal level, we need some basic guidelines around the way AI operates. And, Jeff Crank actually has decided to make sure that, first of all, we give tax cuts and tax breaks to the AI. And in addition to that, has made sure that state governments aren't able to regulate AI at the state level.
Okay, short answers here. We'll start, Ms. Killin, we'll go with you. Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America?
Gulf of Mexico.
Mr. Crank?
Gulf of America.
Okay,
Audience, please.
we've got a new one just today. Lake Ontario or Lake America?
Sorry, I didn't hear that one.
Lake Ontario or Lake America? The president
Lake
issued an
Ontario.
executive order changing the name.
Lake Ontario.
I'm unaware of what's the reference.
What he did this morning, changed the
That-
name. He changed the name to Lake America this morning.
I don't know. I have other more pressing issues I'm working on. Goodness.
Okay? Mr. Crank, Department of Defense or Department of War?
Department of War.
Ms. Killin?
I don't believe there's been an act of Congress that has been signed yet that actually changed the name, so it's the Department of Defense.
Okay, Mr. Crank, can Donald Trump run for another term in 2028?
Of course he can't. The Constitution prohibits him from doing so.
Ms. Killin?
I agree with Jeff Crank.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Crank, we'll begin with you. If you have a free hour in the district, how are you spending it?
Oh, my favorite thing to do is riding along with our law enforcement. I've done 7 ride-alongs with our fire department. Is this by short answer?
Yes.
Oh, I've done 7.
1 hour.
I've done 7 ride-alongs with our local law enforcement and fire. I love doing it.
All right, Ms. Killin.
I love Red Rocks Canyon open space to do hiking, and I will say now that we're headed into football season, watching a Broncos game at Rhinos.
And we'll stick with the same order. Do you agree with the federal government's new guidance on childhood vaccines?
I'm sorry.
Do you agree with the federal government's new guidance on childhood vaccines?
Yeah, I think that the vaccine should be something that parents have more say in whether or not they want to do. I'm not against vaccines, but I'm also not for forced vaccines.
I think we need to have science and data behind these decisions. I think no government should be involved in what's happening in the doctor's office. But what I do know is we should put out responsible guidance. I found the guidance to be irresponsible, and we just had 2 babies die of measles in Lancaster, Pennsylvania this week, and that is a direct result of misinformation and disinformation.
All right. 2 committees you would like to be on or stay on?
I'll stay on the ones I'm on, the House Armed Services Committee and the House Natural Resources Committee.
I'm looking forward to also serving on the House Armed Services Committee, and then because I know we need to address cost of living challenges here, I think I'd be a great fit for the Financial Services Committee because of my experience at USAA, shoring up the financial security of veterans and service members.
And Ms. Killin, can you name a Republican that you have worked with?
Oh, yeah, French Hill, and from Arkansas, and actually Jeff Hurd over in the 3rd.
All right.
Yep.
And Mr. Crank, can you name a Democrat you've worked with?
You bet, lots of them, but Diana DeGette from Denver, who sadly lost her primary to a Democrat socialist and won't be returning, I'm sad to say. But Diana DeGette is a very nice lady. I worked a lot with her.
All right. Ms. Killin, who's a member of your party that you typically disagree with?
Oh, goodness. A lot of them. I would say, I think that probably some of the policies of Bernie Sanders I'm not very aligned with. I think he has some interesting ideas, but I think many of his approaches are not the same approach I would take. And I think it's important to make sure that as we move forward within making an economy work, we have to involve the private sector.
Mr. Crank?
Tom Massey. I don't agree with Tom Massey on an awful lot. There's also this cadre of both Republicans and Democrats in the House that like to go be celebrities rather than serious legislators. And I won't mention specific names, but I don't particularly care for most of those.
Okay, and we'll try and keep these quicker. Who would you vote for as Speaker of the House?
Mike Johnson.
I don't know who will be running in 2027 yet, so we'll see.
Okay. And can you name 3 federal programs that you'd vote to either reduce federal spending or eliminate entirely?
I think it's more about making sure, we just saw what we went through with DOGE, and it's less about specific programs, but actually measuring every program for results. And we haven't, DOGE did not do that, and so we just sort of took literally a chainsaw to these programs in no meaningful way. I think there is fraud, race, and abuse. I think there is room for improving the way these programs work. We have to actually measure them.
National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for Democracy, the U.S. Department of Education, and many others.
Do you support reforming the Supreme Court either through term limits or number of justices?
Or
Reforming the Supreme Court either through term limits or number of justices?
no, I do not.
I think we need to have first real ethics reform at the Supreme Court, and then we can talk about other next opportunities.
Okay, now we'll keep these yes, no. Do you support congressional term limits?
Yes.
Yes, and I am the co-sponsor of the term limits resolution.
And should there be upper age limits for members of Congress?
Yes.
There should probably be, yes.
Okay. All right, and as we mentioned at the beginning, we will give you all the option, if you would like, 1 minute to make
We'll
any
say,
closing statements.
you all took plenty of time during those answers,
I
so
think
if you have
I got
any
my stuff out.
clarification,
Okay.
yeah,
We're good.
go ahead. Okay, we're
We're
back
going to
to
move on. We did talk about DOGE briefly, but now we're going to get into it a little bit deeper. At the beginning of President Trump's second term, Elon Musk came in to head up the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Numerous federal employees lost their jobs and funding was cut to services from USAID to FDA. Was DOGE handled the right way? What decisions by DOGE do you agree or disagree with? Ms. Killin, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, like I said, I think we do need to measure programs for success. You know, when I was in the Army, I was a battalion S4, and there was, at the end of the fiscal year, they gave you, you were in charge of making sure you spent the money before the end of the fiscal year. And at some point, we had 67 soldiers who had not yet qualified on their weapons, but we didn't have any money for ammunition. We only had money for carpet and shades. And I asked, could we move the money so we can make sure these soldiers get qualified on their weapons? No, there was no way to do that. So clearly, there's some inefficiency, and clearly there's redundancy that we need to address, just based on my own experience as a battalion S4. But the way DOGE went about it was thoughtless, it wasn't strategic, and it ended up, first of all, causing a bunch of veterans jobs and actually costing us more money than it actually saved. And that's not the way to actually make cuts in government spending.
Mr. Crank.
Yeah, I support always examining government for inefficiencies and getting rid of it. And I think that in many cases, what DOGE did was good. There were some excesses on both sides, actually. We're looking at it in the Department of Defense right now. There's a lot of acquisition reform that needs to be done, and we just did a lot of acquisition reform. There's a ton of waste in the military services that can be better spent on quality of life issues and other things for our men and women of the military and weapon systems that we need.
Let me just ask you, since you've got a few more seconds here, was it worth the disruption, specifically to federal workers, what DOGE did?
On what DOGE did?
Yes. Was it worth the disruption for
Again,
federal
I think in
employees?
some cases it was worth the disruption, but I think not in the Department of Defense. I don't think it was. But let me say this, neither was the disruption in pay that the Democrats caused by shutting down the government 3 times and not paying our air traffic controllers and our ICE agents and our Border Patrol and others, and our soldiers. That wasn't worth it either.
And I do want to give you 30 seconds, but specifically I'm curious, you did mention that there are inefficiencies
Oh, yeah.
of government, but are there specific cuts DOGE made that you do agree with?
That I do agree with. I can talk about a couple ones that definitely didn't work in terms of things that the problem was, what I've heard from people, what DOGE across the board is that a lot of cuts happened is in the fork in the road piece, left people sort of with crappy middle people instead of actually quality control, and that was a real problem. And also to say, cuts to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau at a time when people can barely get ahead, that have allowed banks and Wall Street to take over people's pocketbooks, that was bad.
All right, we're going to move on to a foreign policy question. Some military experts say the Iran war has depleted our munitions and missile defense systems, left us vulnerable in case there's conflict elsewhere. The United States has threatened to seize Greenland from Denmark, a NATO ally, and floated the possibility of reducing our commitment to NATO. Is America safer now than it was when President Trump took office last year, Mr. Crank?
Well, yes, I think America is safer today than it was before because we have a president that stands up for the United States of America. I don't agree with every decision he's made. I don't support some of the moves that have been talked about with Greenland and doing that. I think it's strategically the president trying to rattle and get a better agreement for some sites that we do need in Greenland. But look, I think that's how the president does this kind of stuff. I don't always agree with it, but I do think that the world is a very dangerous place. We do need to be very careful. We've over many years, we have not paid enough attention to munitions and resupplying munitions, and we really need to do that. And we are in this latest National Defense Authorization Bill. We put in a lot of money to replenish those stocks.
Okay, Ms. Killin?
When I served in the military, a lot of work I did was on NATO expansion after serving as part of Operation Joint Endeavor, Joint Guard. And this was at a time when people knew and understood how important our alliances are to our national security, to our economic security, to global stability. And they are important to the safety and security of our country. And this administration, with, by the way, no check from Jeff Crank, he has a job. He can put a check. People elected him to provide oversight over the executive branch, and he's failed to do that. We are now less safe. And then if you talk about munitions, yes, we have a really staggering, dangerous munition supply. I'm glad we're voting and we're working on resupplying, but estimates show that's going to take 3, 4, 5 years, and we're now giving China the upper hand, and they might be able to attack Taiwan, and we will not have the munitions to support our country, to support Taiwan. It's dangerous. I think everything that's happening in terms of destroying our alliances is deeply, deeply dangerous for the future of our national security.
Mr. Crank, are the alliances stronger than they were a year and a half ago?
Well, first of all, I'm a supporter of NATO. I think NATO is a great alliance. I don't know that they're necessarily stronger. Many of the NATO countries are paying more of their fair share. I'll tell you that, because his president has forced that in many cases, and they even admit that they were freeloading on our backs in many cases and letting us carry the burden for national defense. So I think the NATO alliance is strong. It needs to be stronger, and we ought to continue to push that. But I think it was right for the president to push for NATO countries to pay their fair share. Why should we be doing that for them all these years?
Okay, Ms. Killin.
I have to say, I'm glad that you support NATO, but you've shown nothing in terms of the work that you've done or failed to do to demonstrate your support for making sure the NATO alliance is strong. And the fact is, President Trump, with your approval, went into war with Iran without consulting allies, without consulting Congress. That is the job of a member of Congress, is to put a check on this. And so it does make it more dangerous. And this is why, by the way, our NATO allies are not interested in helping us out in the Strait of Hormuz right now.
Mr. Crank, 30 seconds.
Well, again, the reason we are strong is because we have a president now that is investing in our national defense. We've had to increase the defense budget by a great amount because the previous administration failed to do the munitions, failed to keep up on shipbuilding, failed to keep us as the leader in space. These are things that weren't done during the Biden administration, and we're doing everything we can now to make sure that America remains the strongest military on the face of the earth.
Okay, Ms. Killin, and then we'll wrap this up.
we need to do more to engage with our allies. Our allies, including NATO, are not just NATO, but are absolutely critical to the future of our national security. And make no mistake, this war in Iran in particular has left a void that Xi Jinping is stepping right into. He's been planning for this for years with his Belt and Road Initiative, and now, for the first time in the history of the global community has a higher opinion of China than they do of the United States, and that is deeply dangerous.
All right, immigration has been at the forefront of the president's priorities, with the administration carrying out an aggressive deportation campaign. Ms. Killin, you have called these deportation measures immoral and illegal. Mr. Crank, you've voiced support. What do you believe the administration has gotten right on immigration enforcement? Where has it gone too far? And what changes in immigration law does Congress need to pass? Ms. Killin, you have 1 minute.
I've always said every country deserves to know who and what comes across this border, and I am glad that we now have a safe and secure border. I also think we must make sure that we prioritize deporting dangerous criminals, but that is not what has been happening with ICE. I want to be clear. They've killed American citizens, and they're deporting grandmas, not gangsters. So we need to be very careful and make sure we put guidelines and parameters around the way ICE operates. We also, by the way, I think everyone is just sick of immigration being a political football between both parties. And I promise, I will tell you, I will do everything I can to roll up my sleeves, work with Republicans, work with independents, work with Democrats to actually finally pass a comprehensive immigration reform package that provides a pathway to citizenship, that has a working legal system so that it doesn't take 30 years to become a United States citizen, and ensures that we continue to have a safe, secure border, and we're deporting the most dangerous criminals.
Mr. Crank.
Well, I wish Ms. Killin would have given that advice when she was Deputy Assistant to President Joe Biden in the White House and was Chief of Staff in Vice President Kamala Harris's office, because the Biden administration opened the floodgates on immigration, and we have millions of folks who came over here illegally. And by the way, you want to talk about maybe some housing issues. How about increasing supply of people who need houses? Illegal people coming to the United States. We have to be a nation of the rule of law, period. That means that the rule of law must be respected at the border, and it must be respected in the United States too. ICE should be going after and getting people who are violent criminals and deporting them. They should not be chasing after grandmas and folks like that, but this is the rule of law. If you are here illegally and you are a violent criminal, you should be out of here.
And sticking with immigration, the Trump administration has recently proposed again putting a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas, and over the summer has canceled temporary protective status for hundreds of thousands of refugees. Supporters of the president's policy have presented his deportation efforts as a way to deport the worst of the worst. Is that what's happening, and what is Congress's role? You have 1 minute.
The Haitian woman taking care of your child or your mother who needs home health care is not a dangerous criminal. And I will just say, we need, once again, to pass comprehensive immigration reform to stop using immigration as a political tool, a political football. And the fact that I'll just tell you, these policies are also wreaking havoc on our economy. I hear about it every day. People can't get the labor that they need from Haitians and others who were an important and critical part of our economy. So we need to be thoughtful and strategic about this, and that is not what is happening right now. And it is, by the way, the job of a member of Congress to pass this legislation. And so I appreciate that you have ideas about how to reform ICE, Jeff, but I'd like you to actually do them.
All right. And Mr. Crank, we'll give you 1 minute as well.
Yeah, we don't need to focus on reforming the system. We need to enforce the laws, and that's what the last administration chose not to do, was to enforce the law. I'm all for an agreement on immigration somewhere, and it's going to be in the next Congress, hopefully. But look, we couldn't do that because the border was broken. So until we get the border fixed, and it is finally fixed, this president has fixed the border. I've been down there and visited. It is fixed. And all it took was the political will of a president. That's all it took. It didn't need a bunch of new laws from Congress. we can have some kind of visa reform and those sorts of things, but we couldn't do it until we had a president who was willing to go back to the rule of law, and that's what's so important.
All right, let's
Add one thing on the H-1B visas. It should not be a pay-to-play system. That's not the way an American immigration system should work.
Okay. We'll move on to something simple for our last question before we get to the closing remarks. A viewer sent this in to us. Social Security has a projected funding shortfall beginning in 2032 that would reduce benefits to 80% by some estimates. If elected, how would you work to protect and strengthen Social Security for older Americans, their children, and future generations? Mr. Crank, 1 minute.
Yeah, well, we have to do that. We can't continue to bury our heads in the sand and act like Social Security is not headed for the fiscal cliff. It is. And so when you hear politicians get up and say, oh, they're going to cut this and they're going to cut that, we got to come together as Democrats and Republicans, as Americans, and figure out a solution whereby we protect the benefits of Social Security recipients and we ensure the future viability of that program. I don't have the single answer, but there are people out there that can come together, and members of Congress play obviously a big role in that. But we're going to have to do it, and we're going to have to put this nonsense aside that anytime anybody tries to strengthen it, that they're going to get beat up politically for it. We need to all agree that we're going to strengthen Social Security, that we're going to do everything we can to protect our seniors for that, and work to get it done.
All right, Ms. Killin.
I'll just point out first that the one big beautiful bill that Jeff was the deciding vote on decreased the insolvency period, and so actually now it's, as you pointed out, it's supposed to be insolvent in 6 years when it had a longer runway in the first place. So him adding to the debt added to the insolvency problem that we're seeing with Social Security. I've said many times, we have to raise the cap. If you make $500,000, $1 million in ordinary income, you should pay into Social Security throughout the year. That is just basic fair tax, and that would actually, revenue, and that would make an actual difference in the long-term stability of Social Security. Everyone knows that.
Okay, can we do real quick, 30 seconds, Jeff, and please keep it to 30 seconds.
Just
Do you have any response to that?
Response? All things that protect the benefits of current Social Security recipients should be looked at to keep the solvency of the system there.
Okay. Ms. Killin, anything else?
No, nothing else.
All right.
All right, and that is time. We are now going to be moving into closing statements. Candidates, as we told you ahead of this, you each have 1 minute for your closing statement. And Mr. Crank, you will be going first for the closing statement. Ms. Killin, you will be wrapping us up here. So final remarks you have for voters this evening.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks to our moderators. Thanks to El Pomar Foundation, the Gazette, and KOAA TV for sponsoring this. And thanks to you, Ms. Killin. I appreciate the back and forth tonight. You know, you've been my neighbors for the last 28 years, and I'm honored to represent you. This isn't Denver. This is El Paso County, and we don't want to become Denver. We're different. What makes Colorado great is El Paso County and Colorado Springs. And for the last 35 years, I've worked alongside you to keep Fort Carson open, to build new jails, to fix our roads, protect El Paso County from the crazy leftist policies we see in Denver. Now here in the Pikes Peak region, we have folks who are decent, hardworking, straight shooters. Now you've heard some misstatements and untruths from my opponent here. That may play out in DC, where Ms. Killin is from, but not here in our great community. This election is a choice between a middle-class neighbor who shares your struggles and someone who spent the last 25 years in Washington, D.C. Together, we can continue our work to make our community stronger, and I look forward to earning your vote over the next 2 months.
Hey, you'll applause in a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you to KOAA, the Gazette, and El Pomar. And thank you to all of you for being here tonight and being engaged and listening. And thank you, Jeff, for being engaged. I really appreciate it. You know, we had to move to a new venue because there was so much interest in this debate. And I realized it might be because people just wanted to see you in person. You know, that is part of the job, as I said, and as I've always said, I'm going to show up and do in-person town halls every quarter. I'm going to, and I will tell you, I was born and raised here. This is my town. This is the community that raised me, and I want better for all of you. I hear from you every day about how you are struggling, and so I'll make this commitment to you now. I will always show up. I will always listen, and I will always fight for El Paso County. Thank you.
Now you may applaud. All right, I want to give a big thank you to the Pikes Peak Center this evening, as well as my co-moderator, Ernest Lenning from Colorado Politics. Of course, a special thank you to our candidates as well, Jeff Crank and Jessica Killin, big thank you.